Bionicle Legends 1 Island of Doom. Written by Greg Farsty. Recording by Takanuva. Chapter 4. Takanuva and Jala emerged from the tunnel to see the 7 Piraka standing alone. There was no sign of the Takanuva, only 6 empty cradles where once the canisters had rested. "Where?" asked Jala. "Someplace far too dangerous for any Matoran to go," Turagaduma answered. "This is a matter for Toa." Jala threw his crafter's tool on the ground in anger. "That's not good enough." "Jala!" Vakama exclaimed, shocked. "We are not little Rahi that need to be looked after," the Matoran said quietly. "We fought the Rahi, the Borak, and the Borak Va. We stood up to the Rakshi. I died in that struggle. The Matoran need your guidance and your wisdom, but not to be coddled, protected, or lied to." An uncomfortable silence followed. Takanuva looked down at the floor. Vakama glanced at Duma, who looked furious. Jala looked from one Piraka to another, waiting for one of them to start talking. When none of them did, he kicked his tool, sending it skidding across the stone to stop at Duma's feet. "All right. When you are ready to treat the Matoran with respect, let us know. Until then, no one is doing any more work. Mechinui was in ruins for 1,000 years. Another 1,000 won't hurt." Jala turned and departed, leaving behind 8 very disturbed figures. "What is it?" Kazi asked. Velika and Balta carefully examined the tool stolen from Avac. It was obviously meant to be carried, or perhaps latched onto the arm. Balta had already identified what looked like a launching apparatus, but there did not seem to be anything to shoot. "I don't think this is for building, or to help us find water," said Garan. "What if they find out we took it?" Piraka asked anxiously. He was in no hurry to run into Zaktan again. "Daelu is outside watching the approach to the cave," Balta assured him. "If she sees one of them coming, she will let us know." He turned to Velika. "What do you think?" "When the Kanohi dragon roars, do not look for the stone rat," the Matoran replied. The others waited for him to explain just what that saying meant, but Velika added nothing. "I hate it when he does that," said Kazi. "It's obvious," said Garan impatiently. "If you hear one Rahi, don't expect a different one to appear. If the signs all point one way, then don't expect the truth to be something else." "Oh, that clears everything up," Kazi said sarcastically. "It's not a tool, not like the kind we use," Garan explained. "It's a weapon. The question is, what do they need it for? Who is there here to fight?" Balta hesitated a moment before saying quietly, "Us?" But they're Toa," Piraka insisted. "Are they?" asked Garan. "I'm not so sure. Not sure at all." Daelu spotted Avac heading for the cave. She crossed her tools and felt a surge of energy go through them. The next instant, Avac was rocketing forward at super speed. Unprepared for the sudden acceleration, he stumbled and flew headlong into a pile of rocks. Daelu separated the tools and took a deep breath. Each time she used her equipment to temporarily enhance someone else's attributes, it drained some of her own energy. She knew what would result if she used the tools too often in a short span of time: unconsciousness, and probably death. But she had already decided she would risk whatever she had to in order to keep Avac from finding the others. Avac had shaken off the impact and gotten to his feet, leaning on a boulder for support. Daelu sent another jolt of power to him, this time aimed at enhancing his strength. The boulder suddenly crumbled to pieces before his might, and Avac almost fell again. Frustrated, he kicked out at the rock pile, his blow turning 1,000 pounds of rock into a cloud of dust. Daelu fought the wave of dizziness that washed over her. She had one more thing to try, a more potent attack than the others, but its use almost guaranteed she would collapse from the power drain. Hopefully, it would be enough to convince Avac to turn back. She crossed her tools for a third time. This jolt of power targeted Avac's hearing, enhancing it well beyond normal levels. He stopped dead as his mind was suddenly assailed by every noise on the island. He could hear the breathing of every living thing, every rock being struck by a tool, every Rahi's cry, the sizzle of lava, even every pebble that scraped against another. It was overwhelming, maddening. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. He staggered forward a few steps, then stopped and turned around. Someone or something was doing this to him, of that he had no doubt, but he was in no condition to search for it. Let Radak do it, he thought. That's what the big mass of muscle is for, after all. He started back down the path, never knowing that his opponent was a Matoran who now lay among the rocks, as still as death. "So, what do we do?" asked Kazi. "We're Matoran. They're whatever it is they are. Vezok bites boulders in half for fun. Hakan keeps turning Rahi into piles of ash. Radak slipped and fell 800 feet, smashed into the ice ring head first, and all it did was make him irritable. I can't say I like our chances." Garen nodded. "Maybe not. But we need to know what's going on here. We need someone to get close to that stronghold they had us build. Avac and Vezok have been moving equipment in there for days. Someone has to go in there. Someone they won't look twice at." As one, they turned and looked at Piraka. After several minutes of whispered argument, they convinced the Matoran to take the job. Garen sent Balta out to find Daelu and tell her the meeting was over and that they were heading back to the settlement. When he returned, Balta's expression was grim. "You all better come," he said. "I've never seen her this bad." Zaktan stood in the vast collection chamber. The vaulted room was bare, save for a huge crystal sphere in the center. As the emerald-hued being watched, green and black smoke slowly began to fill the sphere. His eyes glowed as the smoke became denser and more viscous, bolts of electricity crackling in the midst of its substance. "The others believe all this equipment is just another tool to be used in obtaining the Mask of Life," Zaktan thought. "They have no concept of what it is really for, nor will they until it is far too late." "Soon," he whispered in a multitude of voices, "when the gathering is complete and the mask has been found." In a heavily shadowed corner, Piraka listened, paralyzed with fear. Slipping into the building past Radak had been bad enough. Finding this horror inside was enough to make him want to turn around and tell Garen to do his own information gathering. "Life from death," the armored figure breathed. "Death from life." "And me a long way from here," Piraka decided, edging toward the exit. He had made it halfway there when the door suddenly burst open and Hakan and Avac marched into the room. Zaktan whirled at the unexpected interruption. "You were not summoned," he hissed. "The Matoran are getting restless," Hakan replied. "If you weren't spending all your time in here, you would know that. Then again, if you were spending time with them, they would have skipped restless and gone straight to panic. You don't exactly inspire a warm feeling." "One of the Zamor launchers was stolen," Avac broke in. "When I tried to track it down, I was attacked by a Matoran," Hakan said, smiling. "Great and powerful Avac was beaten by a Matoran. What would our old friends among the Dark Hunters say about that?" "They're going to be reciting your eulogy if you don't shut up," Avac growled. "Zaktan, this plan is not going to work. And if they catch on, We will have hundreds of angry Matoran swarming all around like insects. Zaktan shot him an icy look. Avak immediately realized what he had said wrong. Zaktan's body was an aggregate of trillions of microscopic creatures called protodytes, each containing a portion of his consciousness. This gave him unusual powers, but it also created an aura so alien that not even his allies liked being around him. The prototype shifted position in waves, causing his body to be in constant motion, a sight that was nauseating if one looked long enough. "The plan is not at fault," said Zaktan. "The failure is yours. You were supposed to act like Toa, so the Matoran would not suspect the truth." "Well, we're not Toa," Avak snapped. "We're Piraka. Thieves, killers, and, once we have the Mask of Life, rulers. The Toa couldn't stop us, the Dark Hunters couldn't keep us in line, and maybe the days of taking orders from you are over too." Piraka had to stifle a gasp. Garen had been right. The island was under the control of 6 brutal maniacs who thought of Matoran as insects. They were searching for this Mask of Life, whatever that might be, and somehow he doubted they would leave peacefully once they had it. His worrying was interrupted by an angry hum that filled the chamber. Zaktan's right arm had extended toward Avak, and a swarm of protodytes now engulfed the brown Piraka. Normally, the creatures were too small to be seen by the naked eye, but in the trillions they made up a greenish mass that writhed like a tentacle. Avak hit the floor and rolled as the swarm flew into his eyes. Hakan made no move to help, just stood by and watched as if it were all staged for his entertainment. Avak fought a growing sense of horror. The protodytes didn't sting, but their sheer numbers threatened to suffocate him. He opened his mouth to scream, only to have the tiny creature swarm into it. A cloud of green threatened to be the last thing he would ever see. Hakan glanced at Zaktan. "When you're quite finished." Zaktan gave no sign he had heard, but withdrew the protodytes back to him. They slowly coalesced back into his right arm, although Hakan guessed it was with some reluctance. These days, Zaktan so rarely let them out to play. Avak remained on the floor, coughing. Zaktan walked over and nudged him with his foot. "Next time, I will not be so merciful," the green Piraka said flatly. "You can take your mercy and," Avak began, ready to spring to the attack. Hakan stepped in between them before a fight could break out. "What Avak means is that he is grateful for your understanding. He spoke out of turn and deeply regrets it. Don't you, Avak?" When Avak didn't answer, Hakan snapped his foot back and kicked the brown Piraka in the side. "Don't you, Avak?" he repeated. "Yes," Avak spat. "I'm starting to regret a lot of things." Hakan turned his attention back to Zaktan. "The Matoran think they have reason to fear us. I suggest we give them something to really be afraid of." As Zaktan smiled his approval, Piraka slipped out of the chamber. The Matoran had to be warned that everything they had gone through up to now had been a game of slides and shadows compared to what was about to take place. "If only there were Toa here," he thought as he slipped past Radak. "Real Toa. But who am I kidding? Even if there were any coming, by the time they get here, they'll only be in time to bury us." End of chapter 4.